President Hurwitz, dear members of faculty, dear students, thank you very much for your interest and time coming to our third seminar in the series of our seminars, What is the AUCA Liberal Arts Mission, with Christian Johnson Endeavor Foundation. So today's seminar is entitled Religious Studies in Liberal Arts, with professor, with an eminent personality, professor from Harvard, John Schoberlein. I should tell you honestly, I meet Professor today first time, but actually I have this feeling that I know him since, about 12 years, when I Googled through the diverse disciplines concerning Central Asia, and I often catch this name and this CSS center that actually assembled all information about Central Asia. So actually I have this feeling that I'm knowing you, maybe virtually, and now I have this wonderful opportunity to work with you on this seminar. And by the way, this spring time when I went to Harvard to another type of conference and was asking different departments about various questions, obviously concerning this Central Asia, research, etc. Everyone told me, okay, you're going to meet John Schoberlein. So here you are, dear professor, and I think we are very happy to learn from you, to hear you on this excellent subject about religious studies within liberal arts. As I understand, how possible to learn about religions in a secular way, in the way which includes all different humanitarian disciplines, and what will construct or make a part of us as a developed and interesting people. By the way, let me list a remark. As we were talking with Mahinur, with all members of our Johnson project about liberal arts and other things, I was trying to find kind of parallel maybe with the, let's say, Soviet system of education. And my God, it was of course one obvious thing. We always were talking about всесторонне развитый человек. Isn't it right? Before. So I think it's one of the most important missions of the liberal arts. So now let me give the floor to Professor Schoberlein.
I will also stand so that people can see my face a little better. Thank you all for coming. I will try to keep my comments as condensed as possible because I want to have a good discussion afterwards. What I'm going to talk about today, the topic is religious studies and liberal arts. I will have in mind this region in particular as I speak, and the problems that I myself have dealt with, as I am approaching related questions in this region. For that reason, I want to tell you a little bit about how I approach this and why this is an issue for me, why it's something that's important. I'm an anthropologist, and the main thing I study is identity. That's the broad category that I've done throughout all my work, right from the beginning of years ago, starting to do fieldwork in Central Asia in the mid-1980s. And even at that time, it was obvious that religion was an important part of people's identity in Central Asia, even when I was working under conditions, Soviet conditions, where people were very reticent to talk about religion. For some reason, people wanted to talk about it with me particularly, and we often had these sort of quiet conversations about what their view of religion was. And more recently, there's come to be a common discourse about this region that people aren't really concerned about religion per se, that religion is really just a part of their national identity, and it just doesn't fit with what my experience is because of the way that people wanted to talk about religion as something that is really important to them. And of course, then the question is, how does that fit into the broader picture of society, particularly in the context of higher education? And more recently, I've been doing some things that specifically relate to that. I was involved in a project called Teaching Islam in Eurasia, which brought together people who teach Islam to believers as their training as believers, to give them the knowledge that they need to have as believers, as well as people who approach it from the outside, who apply primarily social science approaches and historical approaches to the study of religion. These were all participants from the region, primarily people with a Muslim background themselves, although not all. And it was a real problem to bring these people together because the approaches were so different, and that it was very difficult to find a common language. And I think that that is particularly characteristic of this region. That's a problem for this region in particular, but not only. And that's one thing that I'll be talking about in my comments today. The challenge of bringing together an approach to religion which takes it seriously as a belief system, as something that's deeply held, and a system of beliefs and values and so on, and at the same time also approaching it in the same way that we approach other aspects of society and culture. And in order to contextualize my comments today, I want to begin by taking a bit of a broad view, looking historically at the way that religion and the relationship between religion and liberal education has come to take its current form. And to do that, I first want to talk about the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment, of course, being a period of European history when there was a radical transformation of the relationship between society and religion. And in some way, the Enlightenment was conceptualized as the Western society's achievement of overcoming religion. That is, overcoming the backwardness that was characterized by medieval Catholicism in Western Europe. And, but of course, this should not be exaggerated. That is, for example, for Isaac Newton, a great Enlightenment figure, he started out by working out the formula for gravity and things like that. But later in life, what he was concerned about was figuring out how all this science that he'd been doing earlier related to very cosmic things, and he wrote really primarily religious texts in his later years. And that's a good example that shows how integrated ideas about religion and science and understanding the world in general remained up until that time. The divide grew deeper, I think, quite significantly, especially after Darwin. And Darwin came up with a vision of how the diversity of the world's species came to being that really did not fit well with what people were reading in the Bible. And it created a real challenge for traditional views of religion. And after Darwin, I think people began to feel that they had to make a choice between science and religion. And science was the way towards progress, towards building a modern society, and religion came to be seen as something that held people back, that was a backward influence, encouraging conservatism and superstition and anti-scientific views. And in that context, then, education became something that was aimed at, in some way, counteracting the influence of religion on society. Now, the next major theme I think that we need to explore in terms of the background is thinking about how secular education came to be. And that, of course, took place in the context of the development of secular societies in general. And I think we can point to a couple of major roots of the impulse towards secularism that characterizes the last century and a half or 2 centuries of Western European and North American and other, increasingly the world in general. One source of this impulse, I think, we can point to, for example, the American experience, where a new government was established, which was meant to be defended from, or meant to defend, the government's function was